Hello and welcome to this week's weekly Old School Q&A. I hope you're having a wonderful week. I've just realised we haven't got the usual backdrop set up by our producer, but I'll carry on anyway. It's our game, just in a different universe, I guess. That's what I'm going to go with. While he's working on that, I'm your host, Mod Gambit, and joining me on the couch this week is Mod Sween.
Hello.
Mod Tide.
Hello there.
Mod Husky.
Hello.
And on the end there, we have a new face. Welcome, a big warm welcome, please, for Mod Flippy.
Hi. What's up?
So, yeah, this is a new face on the couch, the latest addition to the Old School team. Huge welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose we'll go for the usual questions and introduce you to our stream. What is your role on the team?
I'm the new junior content dev on the team, so kind of in the same spot as Husky is in now. Obviously, you're more experienced, but yeah, started last week.
Last week?
Yeah.
Awesome. How are you finding it so far? What's it been like for you around the office and on the team?
It's been really nice, actually. I felt really welcome when I came here, and yeah, I've basically only been sitting practicing RuneScript until today. And I'm going to be doing that for another week or so, and it's been really fun.
Awesome, cool.
Yeah.
So you're getting to grips with the code and the script and how it all works on the back end.
Exactly.
Awesome. What's your history with Old School? Have you played the game much in the past?
Yeah, I've been playing for 13 years now, I think, since
Wow.
2006. So I've been playing both RuneScape and RuneScape Iron Man and Old School Iron Man. So I've been kind of juggling accounts and
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, very experienced.
About it.
Good. Well, you've already sort of answered what you're up to at the moment, sort of learning the ropes and getting to grips with things. Do you know what projects you'll be working on in the near future?
Yeah, as soon as I'm done with the training, I think I'll be put to work with Halloween. And I am still kind of like debating what to do for that, but I'm kind of busy with RuneScript for now, so I'll probably be thinking more about that once I'm done. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
So we'll see.
Right, well, I'm going to throw you the usual curveball that we do for new bodies on the sofa, which is if you could add anything to the game, unpolled, what would it be?
See, I was thinking about this before, and although it's kind of generic and seem pretty obvious, I think Group Iron Man, just like Husky said, I know on his first stream, is probably something that could be healthy for the game, I think. I always love the idea of like changing rules or working with the content we have, but restricting or changing rules to kind of make up for a new experience. And I also think it's really fun putting players in a situation where they have to really think and theory craft and do things in a different way. So I'd take like any chance to do that.
Sure, that sounds really good. I think you make a really nice point about using the existing game but playing it in different ways.
Right.
Kind of a lot like, well, obviously Swampletics has done famously.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, Group Iron Man could be a really nice thing for that.
Yeah, and new players, I mean, they have the entire game to explore and try out. And obviously, while there is a lot of content for more experienced players, it still keeps it kind of fresh, and you can feel like you're a noob again. So
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, that's Mod Flippy for you guys, our new junior content developer. I believe you have your Twitter set up already. So
right.
Well, what's your handle for people to follow?
Should be JagXFlippy on Twitter, Twitch, and Reddit.
Amazing. Okay, there we go. So yeah, make sure to drop Mod Flippy a follow on those channels.
Yeah.
I think we've got I forgot to, sorry, I just spotted Mod Bruno over in the chat. Sorry for not introducing you as well earlier. He's dropping the link in the chat for you guys now. Well, thank you very much for introducing yourself, and welcome again to the team.
Thanks.
And we look forward to having you on future streams and seeing what you get up to in terms of developing content for us.
Sure. And if you guys have any ideas or something you would wish for Halloween, then please just go onto my Twitter and give me suggestions.
Awesome.
That should be awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So we're going to say goodbye to Mod Flippy for now and bring on our super sub. In the meantime, we've got some announcements. The first one being RuneFest. So we're still planning for RuneFest and things are looking very exciting. We have had a quick run through of the reveal section, so the keynote of the main releases for next year, and there's lots of good stuff on there. Exclamation mark RuneFest for details about buying your ticket if you want to attend. Mod Ash has joined us on the sofa, just getting mic'd up.
Hello.
So yeah, exclamation mark RuneFest to check out RuneFest tickets. Also, exclamation mark merch will take you to our merch store, I believe.
The FAQ. There's an FAQ
okay.
on forums.
And yeah, so you want to check that out because we have our RuneFest merch already sorted, tees and hoodies. You can get those personalized with your names printed on the back. So for more information about those, exclamation mark merch. Yeah, so other announcements. The Bounty Hunter design blog went live yesterday. Exclamation mark BH will take you to it. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's a big overhaul of the Bounty Hunter system. And there's a lot to read and go through. So if you are interested, please take a look and give us your feedback. I think there's a section, well, I know that there's a section at the bottom for the channels that we've set up for you to let us know what you think. So please do so. Two things I did want to touch on based on the feedback we've had so far are what's going to happen to your existing points and emblems. So the way we have it currently designed is to give you guys a lot of prior warning before any changes are made and a grace period to cash in your emblems and use your points. After seeing people's responses to this, I'm not sure if we can adjust that approach and see. I don't know, maybe the technical limitations of something like leaving the legacy shop open for a while longer. What do we think about something like that?
I expect we can manage that.
Okay, because maybe that would be preferable. I think one of the things players have said quite a lot, well, you guys have said, is I would maybe like a bit more time to spend those excess points.
Maybe leave it till Christmas or something. Sure,
sounds reasonable. The only other thing is players asking where they're going to buy their rune pouches from. Obviously, at the moment, if you're not interested in working up the Slayer points, the alternative is buy an emblem and cash it in for the rune pouch. I think that's something we need to readdress. I think the initial pitch was maybe a bit too high costing at 250 points in the new design. That could always be lowered. Alternatively, we can look at maybe lowering the Slayer points cost in that reward shop, or even just making it tradable is also a potential avenue for us to explore, I guess. Do you have any thoughts on this one, guys?
I was thinking that we might be able to review the limit of how many of the things you've got at any given time. I mean, it's not going to help with the getting of it, but at the moment, you've got one, we won't let you have another. And then if you lose the one you've got, then you're a bit hampered till you can get another.
Right.
Similar to what's going on with quite a lot of the bags we deal with these days. So if we were able to relax that limit, it wouldn't let you carry extra stuff around, because all of them, how many copies of the thing you've got, all your copies would point at the same data space.
Right.
So they'd just be another way of carrying the exact same item you're already carrying. You don't benefit from that. Which means that if we let you have multiple of them, and you don't find it weirdly confusing, they're all pointing at the same item contents, it might help with the convenience when you lose one.
Okay. That might
Which
be
leaves you with the exact same question you started with about where you get them in the first place. But having got a source of the things, you can grind that and then have lots of them and not have to do it every time you want another one.
Sure. Yeah, I know players were saying the same thing about the looting bag quite a lot, which is something else I'd like to maybe reconsider before pushing ahead with the design.
The source of the looting bag in particular, at the moment I think almost every creature in the wilderness has the same chance of dropping it, whether it be a rat or Venenatis. And to be honest, that's not something we do these days. We could scale it very differently. We can also look into anything that's not so combat-y if necessary, although it was only ever intended as a looting bag rather than a carrying random stuff around bag.
Okay. But yes, so please let us know what you think of, well, those issues and everything else that's in the design. I look forward to seeing all of your feedback, and thank you to everyone who's already commented and let us know your thoughts.
Generally though, really positive reception. So there's a few sticking points to iron out which you've covered, but I'm quite pleased with how players reacted to it. We had a lot to live up to, considering it was announced at 2 consecutive Ringfest events, and it's long overdue as far as you're rightfully concerned. So it's just nice to see you engage with it positively and keep giving us feedback, and we'll keep tweaking the design until you're happy with it.
On the topic of PvP, we posted the Last Man Standing rewards poll blog earlier today. Exclamation mark LMS will take you straight to it. We are polling, this is not all the things, but some of the notable things we're polling are Truva Parchment, which is essentially an insurance system for allowing you to bring untradeable items deeper into the wilderness without losing them. The Deadman cosmetic armor, which was seldom used in Deadman itself, but actually looks very cool. And alternate halo colors for PKers who like to use those. There's also a lot of other stuff in there. I think a chance to exchange points for small amounts of experience, as well as a crate system, a 3-tick one-handed weapon, lots of good stuff. We're expecting to poll that from Friday to Wednesday, I believe, are the dates we have posted. In other news on Last Man Standing, tomorrow's update brings the beta back online again. We've made some changes, including gear changes, infinite run energy, and a cap on the amount of food that you can carry. At the same time, we're going to be testing some line of sight changes. Ash, are you able to give us a little more insight into why those are being changed?
Yeah, I mean, your explanation in the blog was pretty darn good, I think. That was yours, wasn't it?
Mainly acorns.
Well, your team. Anyway, from 2004 onwards, when our engine was written, the line of sight algorithm was not symmetrical, so there'd be situations where A could shoot at B, but B couldn't see A to shoot back, which makes no sense, but that's what we had and what we've kind of always had, all the way back to the launch of RS2 in March 2004, I think. Now, other RuneScape, they got theirs changed at some point in the intervening years. Old School, coming from 2007, had the original version. And we've been quite cautious about changing that one, because it isn't just PvP it's going to affect. It's anything where anything shoots at anything else, whether that's, well, you shooting Zook, Zook shooting you, trying to get an angle on a grapple shortcut, trying to use a safe spot in a cave, Sorceress's Garden where you're dodging elementals, Piscator's thing using the same kind of mechanic. All of these things are affected by how the game determines line of sight. And of course some of these are rather sensitive to change. So change like this, obviously we're not going to be able to test every single safe spot there's ever been to see how it's been affected. And even if we were, it's meant to make a difference because the problem with the current algorithm is it's buggy. Anyway, so what we're going to do is put it online on some beta worlds from tomorrow, with Last Man Standing as well, because that's a rather popular place to shoot at other players. And we'll give you the 6 jabs thing as well, why not? So you can try out how the game feels with this new line of sight algorithm, and with any luck we'll be able to iron out the worst problems, if any, with it before rolling it out to the whole game. But ultimately we do have to expect there will be some changes, because the whole point was to make some changes because the current one's buggy. And look on the bright side, I think it's the same algorithm they have had in the pre-EOC era. You like that?
Thank you very much for breaking that down for us. So yeah, that's the beta coming out tomorrow. In the same update, we also have a marble lectern, which is well, essentially a combination of all the other lecterns in your POH. It will allow you to make all of the things that they can make. We're also improving the lectern interface to have quantity buttons, similar, I believe, to the recent change to the silver crafting and smithing interfaces. We're improving the fishing trawler minigame. I can't remember exactly the tweaks we've made.
I can. So at the moment, if you've got multiple people trying to fix the same leak simultaneously, most of them end up having a dead click and achieve nothing. Meanwhile, their activity bar keeps on draining, even though they were trying to do something, but they didn't have very good ping. So sometimes they get hoofed out the trawler altogether. What I've tried to do is change how the leaky walls and fixed walls transition back and forth, so that if multiple people are clicking on it at the same time, it's a bit more generous about letting more of them succeed in doing something. Means, like, you know, maybe lots of them will end up using a swamp paste to all fix the same leak, but you know, you probably weren't too fussed about the price of your swamp paste. What you really want is to be able to get the leak fixed, get your activity, move on to the next thing, get back to bailing. In multiplayer tests we've done internally, it does feel a lot less dead clicky than it used to. Also, while I was in there, and by the way, I had to trawl very deep into its code to work out how to do this one, I found out what was wrong with its timer, which has always said it's 12 minutes long when it isn't, it's 10 minutes. But the timer started at 12 and just ticked down, well, 1.2 minutes per minute. The dev who wrote it left a comment saying that this process runs every 5 cycles, but in fact it was running every 6 cycles, or vice versa, or something like that. So the clock was just wrong in there, and always has been. I've taken the opportunity to make the clock correct. We're aware, by the way, that players would like the trawler, some players at least, would like the trawler to be shorter. That's not something we've snuck into this update, but you know, it's something we can talk about, changing aspects of the design, because I've been through so much of the code to do this thing about the dead clicks that I'm a lot more confident being able to change other bits about it now. Might even be able to let the trawler run more than one copy on the world at a time, which would be an interesting conversion. Anyway, so we've got the dead clicks, got the timer being corrected. Also, you know, there's this weird behaviour where you stand next to one leak. You can fix the leak you're standing next to. You can fix the leak on one side of you, but you can't fix the leak on the other side of you without walking round. And I found out why that is and fixed it. So now you can fix the leak you're in front of you and the two on either side, nice. Which makes a lot more sense, really. Also, the activity bar. It's always been quite harsh as activity bars go. And in particular, it carried on ticking down even if there was no water for you to bail and no leaks, which, you know, being penalised when you couldn't possibly do anything useful is harsh. So I've changed it so that the activity bar goes down only when you could credibly be doing something, like only when there's, well, at least some water and or maybe a leak to play with. Hopefully that'll be fairer without letting people just freeload. That, I think... Oh, and yeah, interfaces. If you go in there and open a menu, like a skill guide, not that you go to the trawler to read skill guides, surely, but just sometimes you want to be able to open an interface, maybe report abuse. Current behaviour is the trawler shuts all your interfaces like every 3 seconds. I've made it not do that. Obviously it has to shut your interfaces when it moves you between the half-sunk trawler and the dry trawler. But apart from that, it's a lot easier to read things while you're in there. Hope it helps.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know those are some very popular changes. It's been a while that players have wanted us to maybe streamline some aspects of Fishing Trawler, so thank you for those.
And big thanks, of course, to Mods Wolf and Rock for getting this one through testing, so that we can actually launch it without, launching my untested code and hoping very hard.
Players have been trying to fix the trawler for years, and Ash has just done it in a couple of weeks.
It did take a while.
Yeah.
Nice. Other things happening in the update, we've got a few Song of the Elves changes as well. So we're adding a replay function for all of the cutscenes. So once you've completed the quest, you can go through the cutscenes if you want to see the story again. And we're also allowing you to replay the main boss fight. I won't say any more just for fear of accidentally spoiling some of the story. But yeah, that's something you'll be able to do as of tomorrow.
I think we can at least confirm that it's got time tracking on it.
Yes, it will have time tracking and a kill count for people who want to flex those.
I think some of them also have global leaderboards as well. Or am I mistaken there?
It's got the global best time. I don't think they've been able to do a global best name.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
There's something global.
We're also adding 2 of the boss fights, not the one that we just mentioned, but another 2. I'm sort of giving away how many big fights there are in the quest. Another 2 of them are being added to the Nightmare Zone for you to, well, replay there if you wish. That's about it for tomorrow's update. There are obviously a few other smaller changes as well.
Quite a lot of graphical bug fixes in this one. Mod West has fixed quite a lot of bits of costume that stretched when you did certain animations. Mm-hmm. Not every issue of that nature, but there's a pretty long list in there. Look forward to the patch notes.
I think the top 10 fixes were dedicated to stretching.
Weird flex, but okay.
That has just reminded me, another graphical change I believe Mod West is responsible for is bringing the clue caskets in line with the colour coding system for the clue scrolls.
Oh yes.
Which is a nice one. All right, I'm going to move on to the questions then. If you have any questions that you want to ask during the stream, make sure to send them to Mod Bruno, who is on the chat at OldSchoolRS. Wait, did we... What are they laughing at? Did we say something funny that I didn't... Must have missed it.
I think it's Ash's weird flex.
Oh,
I think they're a bit delayed.
Lag.
Right, so our first question was the highest upvoted one that I saw, so I figure we should address it. So this player asked, with WoW Classic around the corner, has Jagex thought about the value that you get for a RuneScape membership versus a WoW membership? WoW Classic will directly compete with Old School for players who are chasing the 2004 to 2007 nostalgia of the golden age of MMOs. And I think Mod Sween, you offered to field this one.
I haven't really prepared anything. It's just more of a matter of opinion on how you perceive value. Personally, I think we offer quite good value for membership. We are weekly updates apart from Christmas when we take some time off. You don't pay for expansions like you do in WoW. It's just the subscription alone. Also, we don't sell level boosts like WoW do. And I'm not trying to throw shade on WoW. I'm probably going to try Classic myself. But we don't really know anything about their kind of update cadence, if they're going to release expansions, if they're going to have other sources of monetization. So I guess you're rightfully able to look at weaknesses in our subscription. So stuff like player support and account security you're unhappy with, well, that's what we're working on currently. I'm assured that there's a blog coming this month, which is a next step for account security, so there'll be more information there. So we're trying to address the problems you see with our value, and we're going to keep on making good content every week.
Awesome, thank you for that one. I'll crack on then with the other questions, most of them content related. The first is, can you buff Wilderness Slayer? Laren's keys currently don't offset the loss of value in Tier 1 emblems. I actually pulled this question before we posted the Bounty Hunter design blog. I think the loss in value they were referring to at the time was just the steady drop that we've seen in Tier 1 emblems. But I think it's maybe even more relevant now with the suggestion in the Bounty Hunter design.
Something we held back from when we first added Laren's keys is adding various unique things that might make good combat rewards for the wilderness, because we knew we'd got a couple of blogs coming out with Bounty Hunter and Last Man Standing, both of which needed rewards that kind of fell in the same category of stuff. So to a certain extent we deliberately left Laren's keys, left ideas off those so that we could offer them elsewhere. But now we've got slightly more clarity on what our plans are with Last Man Standing and Bounty Hunter. We can look at ideas we didn't use on those, knowing that they're available for Laren's chests. I'm surprised that name stuck so well, because I just threw a couple of syllables together.
That may sound good enough, I reckon.
Laren.
Would we like to offer uniques in those chests rather than increasing the overall sort of average value?
I would prefer to. Partly because a unique can be a lot more effective than, say, spaffing out a lot more resources from PVM that could otherwise have come from skilling content, or injecting lots of coins into the game. Whereas a unique will hopefully have a slightly more significant value, and also be a thing to hope for when you're heading there and wondering whether you're going to get strike it lucky. There's nothing like a unique to make it feel like you did strike it lucky. Something we learnt long ago on, I think as far back as a Polypore dungeon, is that even if you make a loot table where the average rate is acceptable to players, but nothing on there is uncommon, it stops feeling very exciting to them. This was an actual source of complaints at the time. So since then I've always been in favour of there being something very uncommon to watch out for, in the hope that it's going to be that moment, especially if you can carry a stack of them keys around.
Okay.
Players do constantly tell us how much they love the God Wars dungeon loot tables, for example, because of the promise of larger uniques. That said, with the Gauntlet, we do have the Blade of Seldor offered as the big unique, but players are complaining that the loot isn't viable enough. It's not quite the Vorkath or Zulrah that it used to. So maybe all players aren't the same, or maybe we need to find a better middle ground. Personally, I do prefer the approach of uniques.
I think Corrupted Gauntlet is actually better than people think, more so the corrupted version. And people quite often forget to count the value for the shards. Sure, they need processed by the player, but they're worth quite a bit, actually, and they add a lot to the thing, and you can't see them in your price checker the same. So I think people underplayed that quite a lot. Yeah, that drop table, as far as I know, speaking to the devs, was created purely to be kind of God's Warsy with, you don't have supplies to make your costs back, obviously, but you get enough that it's worth doing in the hopes of getting those rare uniques. And even the armor seeds are, they're like just shy of $1 mil. That's still a reasonable drop to get. That's going to make that hour better than some of the other hours.
That's true. I think you make a really valid point as well about distinguishing between the standard and corrupted Gauntlet.
Yeah.
We're still quite early days after the release, and especially when that initial feedback came in, most players were dying to the corrupted Gauntlet far more than actually completing it. So maybe once we've got more data on the average value players are getting back from that, it'll even out a bit.
Also, I don't think Ed and Lenny have revealed the rates for either Gauntlet yet, have they?
No.
I don't believe so, no. That is a topic we touched on before the stream went live, though. It's a question later on, but I'll address it now, which was what is the rate of the agility pet on the Prifddinas course? We're not going to tell you just now. We're going to leave that as a spoiler. We can confirm that the Agility Pet is available on that course, if you were wondering. But I do believe the Song of the Elves team plan to release all of those sort of stats, including Gauntlet Drop Table, in the near future, as we often do, a little while after the release.
I think one of the interesting things about the Gauntlet Drop Table as well is people were not doing it consistently at first, and they were still doing speedrunning strategies with the emphasis on the tournament and seeing the competition, see how well they can do it. Mm-hmm. Now that there is no incentive to go for that fastest time, and it's instead what is the best method to get the most kills per hour? Is it better to have safer guaranteed kills that are slower compared to that risky quicker kill? So I think that even now it's a bit too early to say. We need to kind of get numbers on what the average, completions an hour is for someone who's consistently doing them.
That's true. All right, I'll move on to our next question, which is, could we store axes at the canoe stations? They're currently not convenient to use, and this might help a little bit. Do we have any thoughts on this?
The tech isn't hard except for axes with charges built into them, for which it is. Mind you, you maybe don't need that kind of axe stored in your canoe station, unless you're really flexing when you travel by river. It's not a cruise ship. So for the more basic axes, that would be fine, I think.
Cool.
I think that's a genuine quality of life change. And there was talk as well, when we posted the new player blog, for example, and we posited the idea of a transport system, some players did ask us to consider, rather than forcing something that has you floating around the map or whatever, to use existing methods of transportation like canoes. So I guess, would players be up for us allowing you to store your axe and also expanding it to free-to-play and making it just a more thematic way of getting around the map? There's a question for the players.
Possibly adding more canoes to other rivers.
Yes, the Ardoyne River could benefit a little.
Yeah, that'd be nice. They are very underused. I can't remember the last time I used one that wasn't for, I think it's a diary achievement for one of them, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's that.
That's about it.
I mean, a trip back to Edgefield when you haven't got a glory has its uses.
And they are significantly slower than the teleport alternatives, so I still think it's worth, we can expand on that without fear of, feature creeping and making transport. And you still have to unlock those levels, so.
Our next player asks, they say, excuse me, challenges such as the Inferno are difficult even with a twisted bow. However, in 5 years' time, new, better armors and weapons will have been released, making these challenges easier and devaluing the achievements of players in previous years. Does the team think this is a serious issue, and what can be done to limit this? It's essentially a question about power creep and how we handle that.
I think players themselves do quite a good job of limiting power creep. Should we miss it in the first glance, when it goes to a blog, we're quite told that's power creep. It goes to poll. If you look at the Chambers of Xeric rewards poll, that failed on a number of occasions, and we had to completely revisit and rebalance accordingly. That's why we seem to be pursuing, looking at niche weaponry and niche armors rather than, say, here's a straight new tier, here's another new tier. Wait, it's tier 99 now.
There was a time when the King Black Dragon was the ultimate boss in the game. Power creep has happened since 2004. It now is not the most awesome boss in the game, but other bosses have been released since then that are a bit more interesting, and including the Inferno. I do expect there'll be more of that nature in future, in the same, regardless of what happens to the armor and weapons. Just because sometimes we add really top-end challenges.
I think it's worth also pointing out the Inferno has a lot of difficulty that's just beyond gear a little bit. There's a lot of quick decision making, a safe spot that you suddenly spot and you need to take, prioritizing monsters that's very different to something like Fight Caves, which is mostly you just safe spot it, and Jad is very, you have to react every 6 ticks or whatever the attack speed of him is. Zuck, on the other hand, it doesn't matter if you have the best defensive gear in the game, he's still going to one-shot you. You still need to follow the shield, you still need to do it while killing a Jad, and dealing with the fact there's a mage and ranger spawn. Those mechanics aren't going away. It's going to get slightly easier if we power creep a little bit, but the mechanics of the fight are still of the nature that it's going to be difficult regardless. And hey, if people think that the Inferno is not hard enough and we've got better gear, we can make something more hard, more difficult,
Corrupted Inferno.
Corrupted Inferno, Inferno hard mode, perhaps, but it's just the nature of the thing. I mean, Fight Caves was once prestigious, wasn't it? and then blowpipe kind of ruined that as well as a few other things. So yeah, I just think it's I'm seeing a lot of Justiciar in there. It makes it easier. I don't think it makes Zuck any easier though.
Yeah, funny you mentioned the blowpipe. I saw a comment in the chat which was at tier 75, the twisted bow and the blowpipe should be maybe increased to somewhere around 90. We have talked about this before. I can't remember what our sort of general consensus is. Maybe let me know your thoughts, guys. I'm personally in favour of rebalancing the tiers. I think the weapons are maybe, I know they're a lot more powerful than other weapons at similar tiers, so I would be up for this.
Yeah, I think the only concern that I think I raised last time this came up was if someone has an account that they use a twisted bow to kill Zuck on and has an infernal cape to PK with, if we make it tier 90 range, that increases the combat bracket a little bit. I don't think that's a reason to stop it. I think it would do a lot of good for the game to set almost these as a power ceiling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In a way, where we can suddenly say here's a tier 85 weapon that's not as good as a twisted bow against things weak to magic, but it's better than some of the other stuff,
Yeah, it does open up that tier as well, where we haven't got much stuff at sort of 80 to 90 as well, which would be, I think, useful.
Yeah.
And in that way, it's not really power creep, because although it'd be a high, because for example, we could add an item that's very powerful at tier 80, 85, but it would still probably not be as good as your scythe, your twisted bow. So that would feel a bit strange.
I think it is worth saying that the scythe and twisted bow are powerful, but they do require specific stats on monsters to be powerful.
This is true.
Such as the size of the creature for the scythe, along with lower defense. And obviously the magic level for twisted bow. It's not difficult to make a creature pretty resistant to the twisted bow.
I'll move on to our next question, which is, can you improve the Calphite Queen's drop table? The only reason to kill the boss at the moment is for the pet, its head, or the achievement diary requirement. What do we reckon? I don't know what the average value of the KQ is off the top of my head, but I do know it's not particularly good.
It still has some pretty good drops, though. I mean, it has 2 magic seeds, it has the wines. We've already... before I worked here, hasn't it already been buffed like 2 or 3 times, I think, from its initial
Certainly
release?
At least once. It's partly to add food so you could extend your trips there.
It is a boss with no requirements as well. Sure, the elite diary makes it quicker, but...
I'm seeing a mixed reaction in the chat, although actually a lot of people saying it is already quite okay. Others saying it's dead content, so quite a mixed, range of opinions in there.
If we ever made a new armour that was created by bolting something onto a dragon chain, that might indirectly buff the KQ without buffing the KQ.
That's true.
And the idea of upgrading existing kit to make the new top-end stuff has been... Well, it's worked quite well before, where people didn't want the existing items to become valueless.
I'm seeing a few numbers. I mean, people saying KQ's 1 to 2 mil an hour with the diary. I don't know the numbers, but that feels about right for a boss with no requirements. I know you still need the diary, but...
It does hit pretty hard, though, for a boss
Yeah.
that is that easy to access. I saw another suggestion, which was just decrease the respawn timer. Because at the moment, it doesn't make a difference if you're, say, banking or teleporting back after every trip, but for people who want to get 1 or 2 kills or more per inventory, that could improve it.
I don't know how many people that would. The difference when you've got a Dragon Warhammer spec is pretty significant against the Calphite Queen, but especially with the diary, you get back really fast. So I don't think a lot of players would take that option, but I don't see why we couldn't just make it quicker to make it easier for those that do want to stay, especially in groups.
Okay. I really like this next question, which was, is it possible to follow your pet to have the same effect of 2 players following each other?
The engine team programmed the player following player thing very specifically. They would need to do likewise for the pets, I think, if we're going to have it exactly the same. I do not see this being something that gets their time anytime soon.
Okay.
Given the number of other things we want from them besides dancing with your pet.
What if we made it so you could also tell your pet to follow someone else? So you're following your pet, which is following someone else. So you got this little train going on.
I think that'd be awesome. We could hack something that isn't built into the engine. It wouldn't be exactly the same, but periodically it would just try to make you walk back to your pet. You, of course, might find it really, really frustrating that this was happening when you might want to stop. But we could probably let you mess around and do-si-do and keep teleporting back and forth with your pet. Or we could do something else.
Just reminded me of a bug I had when I was implementing the Sarachnis pet, pun intended, where she just randomly decided to walk away from the player after talking to them.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, that's strange. Ash, can you help me with this? And Ash pointed out the problem that I'd done with my implementation. But
Oh, it used to happen to quite a few of the pets. I quietly fixed a lot of them after their first launch. But going further back, the Zenaris Choir thing, that god-awful content where a six-headed entity in one dress turns up and looms at you in Zenaris. That had it too, for the same reason. And it would just go skidding off around Zenaris all by itself, but still be under the impression it was following somebody. So if you just approach this random choir, it would tell you to leave it alone and it's following somebody else, but it wasn't. It made Zenaris feel even more weird than it should. And I do not like that piece of content, sorry.
Can we stop rangers in PvP from using full armor sets and still having good ranged accuracy? I saw this question come up quite a bit, or at least this feedback point come up quite a bit while I was discussing bounty hunter changes. A lot of people saying I shouldn't be hit so often by someone ranging me when they're wearing a fighter torso and rune plate legs, for example. I think we did in the initial PvP changes section of that blog want to offer a reduction in the offensive stats for ranged of those items, but we hadn't really settled on any specific numbers yet. But how do we feel about this generally?
I'd like to thank Bruno for pointing out it's you're referring to like a piece of armour rather than armadillo.
Oh,
It did
right.
confuse me.
Did I say? Okay, right. I might have been misleading.
You said the same thing, but it sounded similar. So.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I mean metal melee armor specifically.
it's interesting because most PK accounts have really low defense anyway, so they're going to be hard to hit. And basically all the DPS of any ranged weapon is front loaded by the ammunition having the entire bulk of the strength. So it doesn't matter. Even if we reduce the accuracy, you can still wait for a hard hit and time your specs accordingly. Sure, with that better accuracy, you can get these more often. I think we were talking about it just yesterday, actually, and like it wouldn't be the fighter torso is essentially a rune plate body with strength. So why don't we make it have the same negative as a rune plate body? But stuff like this would need to be polled, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whichever way it gets implemented, I do like the concept of keeping the combat triangle, like each corner, more distinct. I think that's sort of the whole point of switching and trying to outplay your opponent in PvP is the point of changing styles quickly. But cases where you can do things like this, like attack in one mode but be geared up and defending another, is well, we should try and reduce that if possible.
Interesting to see what they thought of negative range strength on melee gear. That would be something that's never done. We don't do negative strength on anything. It would be a more direct fix to the problem, but I don't know if that feels old school, which is quite often a
It would
thing.
be unusual, but it might be the most effective way if this is something people want us to balance.
Yeah.
Can we get a space in the player-owned house for storing the Ardoin Knight armor from Song of the Elves? It is great fashionscape.
And I think Mod Lenny did it for tomorrow's update.
There you go. The answer is yes, it's coming tomorrow.
Unless it was you.
No, it wasn't me.
Must be
Can
Lenny then.
Oh, sorry. Can Superior Slayer monsters in the Iworth dungeon have a guaranteed drop of crystal shards? I think at the moment the monsters in there drop crystal shards occasionally, but the Superiors, as far as I know, don't drop them at all, which seems possibly unfair, if that is the case.
I was gonna say, didn't we just poll a change to what those shards do? It hasn't, well, it passed the poll, but it hasn't been enacted yet.
Right.
Might not be a bad thing if we just didn't do anything else with the shards until that's taken effect and players get to see it, rather than promising more changes on the back of the one they haven't seen yet.
Sure, that makes sense.
The shards hold a lot of value to the activities done in Prif. I think if we make them more common or guaranteed drops, then it reduces that. Also, that whole dungeon, I believe, is cannonable.
Yes.
So, yeah, so changing drop rates in there would be quite a big change because of that, because the rate you can kill them would be significantly higher.
Sure. Okay, so we probably wouldn't look to add more crystal shards into the game at this time. I realised we're actually we're about 3/4 of the way through the stream, and there was some user-generated content I wanted to share. 2 pieces of art. Also, I know, Mod Sween, you wanted to get away a bit early. Sorry, I meant to do this possibly earlier in the
I've
stream.
got quite a bad headache, so I was going to shoot off halfway through, but we're near the end now, so I might as well.
I'm sorry for keeping you on the sofa longer than you wanted. Time sort of got away from me. If we can bring up the pictures, the 2 things I wanted to share. I can't remember the names of the. I think they're watermarked at the bottom there. If you want to follow them.
Squint. It looks like his Instagram is cosplay_shots.
So yeah, they've dressed up as a guard here for you, which I thought was excellent. I really like this. Yeah. Do you like this, guys?
I think it looks nice. But from here, the shirt, it doesn't look like... The shirt looks like the chain's actually been painted on from here.
Ah, yeah, I can see what you mean.
I guess one of the comments say it was 3D printed, or the pattern was 3D printed
really?
somehow, yeah.
Nice.
Be careful, life expectancy is pretty low for guards, so...
That's a very distinct muscle
What,
on the arm.
on the arm, yeah. So it is. Yeah, we've also got I believe, a picture of the Burroughs brothers. Again, apologies, I can't remember the name.
Volcaban.
Volcaban, is it? Yeah. I just thought this was, nice, funny. Picture of the Burroughs brothers. I really like the style of this one, particularly Guffin in the bottom right there. Probably my favourite.
Gotta love Aram's face though.
Yeah.
Is it meant to be Adventure Time themes?
Okay. Yeah, it could be. It does look like that style. Very nice. I just wanted to share those with you guys. I think we're likely to credit them probably on social at some point as well, is the plan. All right, I'll crack on with our remaining questions then. So our next player asks if we can add a way to select roles in Theatre of Blood at the board stage when you're setting up your group. This would be to avoid conflict during the raid and resulting in people leaving the party. What are our thoughts on this one?
The only roles I can think of is you might not want everyone to bring mage, so you might want people specifically to freeze the Nilicus, to freeze the Nilicus in the maiden fight, and then actually to mage the Nilicus. I don't see. There's no sort of role thing that we've put in to say this is you need this person to do that. It's kind of just what the players have figured out for their meta. So I don't see why they don't just communicate with each other. And even if everyone brings magic, it's only, I think I personally only take an ancestral top and a trident, so it's not even that many more inventory slots. Maybe runes as well, water runes. So it's the raid's still very doable even with everyone taking it. I think if you can't communicate with the people, even as something as basic as take magic,
Yeah, sure.
then you probably shouldn't raid with them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Personally.
Sure. I suppose maybe this suggestion comes from a wider issue, which is just the difficulty in finding teams.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, maybe we can't think of something off the top of our head right here on the sofa, but that's something I'd like us to think maybe a bit more about generally.
Do we have a mini-game chat channel for it? For Theatre of Blood?
I'm not sure, actually.
If we did, would that make it easier for people if they could just go in and be looking for a +1 or something like that? Or
Yeah,
I don't know how possible that is.
Well, making one isn't a problem, but I think within it, if a party could indicate, even just with toggles of want more mage, want more tank, whatever, via the recruiting board, then people might be slightly more likely to join an appropriate party when scanning through it, which might cover what they're looking for slightly more directly. And of course, because if somebody actually does get into that party via the recruiting board, then at least they'll know who they want to talk to rather than having to shout to anybody to try and find the person they would need.
Yeah, I just think that if someone's going to join the group and say, sorry, can you mage? And he's like, no, I don't want to mage, then I think that's also just being a bit unreasonable.
Sure.
Their magic stat would be exposed for the rest of the party to see.
Which they can accept someone on as well, because they can see that. So
Yeah, I mean, I suspect a lot of people around there have pretty decent stats regardless, and it's not their inability to mage is going to hold them back, other than apparently their refusal to do so.
yeah.
Okay. Going to move on to our next question. We're actually very close to the end of our list of questions, and thankfully we're at nearly the end of the stream as well. But if you do have any you want to ask still, at OldSchoolRS in the chat, Mod Bruno will gather them for you and list them at the bottom here for me to relay.
I'm seeing, as usual, every stream we're seeing lots of questions about Group Iron Man, confirmation, blah blah blah. We know it's something that some of you seem to want, but we're not in a position yet to blog it or poll it, and we won't be doing that until we can offer the content, because it's still reliant on other teams' work. So we won't offer the content until we're in a position to be able to do it.
Our next question I thought was really nice. The next player asks if, they say that the home teleport icon is based on the standard spellbook teleport. Could its colour and style be updated to match your current spellbook? For example, the Arceus home teleport would be a teal triangle instead of a purple circle.
I like that. I think that would look pretty cool. I don't know how much we've got the graphics work for it. It depends on artists, I guess, and what they want to do.
I mean, being relatively small icons, hopefully they wouldn't be too drastic a change for them to make.
And given that they already exist, changing it to a H seems...
With a bit of smoothing for the large version of the icon.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a nice little small change, I think. Obviously, it doesn't change very much, and I think we were saying earlier about this question, players don't tend to use the home teleport on some of the other books so much as maybe the standard one.
No, it's interesting because Lunar has a lunar teleport anyway to the Moon Clan. Edgeville, well, you probably have it as your respawn point, so killing yourself will be quicker. Or reducing your hit points to 0 will be quicker.
In the game.
In the game.
But as a little sort of aesthetic change, if it's popular, maybe we'd go ahead with something like that. We've upset them.
Well, at least they haven't got the wrong idea about this and tried to get to Lumbridge the wrong way.
Do you know, I have heard people who lost their hardcore status because they wanted to get to Lumbridge quickly and killed themselves.
Oh no.
The 14th reason why.
Yep.
Moving on, one player gave a number of ideas for the Town of Sleep, such as fishing and mining spots along the coast, as well as pickpocketable Firewatch at a high thieving level and a house portal. I just wanted to comment on this because it's not the first time we've had players ask us if we could do more with that area. It's quite a nice thematic, atmospheric place, but there's not a whole lot to do there. All we can say for the time being is that we do have some plans for that sort of town, but we're not going to go into too much detail about what those are just yet. But thank you for your suggestions. We wanted to just acknowledge them and say we'll be taking them into account.
So I think it might be worth highlighting that Sleep was introduced with a taste of hope, which didn't quite end the quest line. So
Right.
perhaps as the quest line unfolds further, so too will the Town of Sleep.
That's absolutely true.
I do wonder where the heart behind these questions comes from a little bit, and is it just we want to make Settled's life easier, you know?
I think, yeah, the player who made this comment said something along the lines of in before Swampletics conspiracy.
Yep.
But that has been the response for a while now whenever something is suggested in the Mauritania region. Which is not to say we're not open to suggestions for that area. But if they do sort of sound like they're designed to benefit one specific player, we may consider other changes instead.
If, on the other hand, the fishing spots were the same ones you get on the south coast of Berg de Rot, then it would be relatively uncontroversial.
Yeah.
Equally, I think there are snowflake accounts popping up everywhere, so it might be the case that we can't touch any bit of content lest we make one person's account easier.
It is interesting the influence that content creators like that have.
Oh,
I mean,
for sure.
even if we just made like pickpocketable Firewatch and it happened to have a rune crossbow on the drop table, whether we wanted it or not, that is just seen as like interfering with this account, and we just can't do that for reasons of upsetting the players. And
That would be a special update.
yeah.
I like the idea that you sneak up on a vampire and pull a very large crossbow out of its pocket. Rock and potato, anyone?
We've had a history of those being pickpocketable, haven't we?
Not in old school. In old school, if you do get one, it won't do anything for you.
Moving on to our penultimate suggestion before questions from the chat. Someone has asked if we could move Abigaila. Am I saying that right? Abigaila, from the northeast wall of the Grand Exchange to a chair in Gypsy Iris's tent, because this would fit a bit more thematically. Perhaps she could be Iris's understudy and offer her scrying service from there instead.
I think in her dialogue she says she likes trading, but yes, we could stick her in a chair somewhere else. She's also available in Lumbridge if anyone wants her. She's upstairs in the general store.
Yeah, I don't know how big a change this is for people. I wonder how many people are actually bothered by her being where she is. She's quite out the way.
We can stick her more out the way in a different corner of the Grand Exchange where it's a bit less visible, or in a field somewhere else entirely. The thought was that if you're killing time waiting for a trade-off to update, you might want her services to just have a look-see at what's going on down the Theatre of Blood. So she's there because you might have time on your hands in that vicinity. But we can shove her somewhere else. I'm not so inclined to try and make her the assistant to another character who's got a huge dialogue tree for multiple quests already, because if she's going to be working for the Gypsy, then the two actually ought to refer to each other in some way, and that's not something we're likely to be tying into a complex dialogue tree like Ms. Aris has. So maybe somewhere else if you don't want her at the Grand Exchange. But in a tree, down a well, whatever. In a chair, that's the word.
Okay. Can the rare drop table be updated? It's no longer exciting to get a drop from it. Full stop. That was the question. It's certainly not as exciting as maybe it was when the rare drop table was first introduced. I think that's fair to say.
I think it should
How do
be.
you feel about changing it?
I think we should just rename it to the Troll Drop Table. Personally, like that was kind of the philosophy I had designing when I was doing Forthos stuff. Was I was like, okay, everything has like a 1% chance to upset the player, which is kind of very different to the rare drop table's intentions. So, I feel like even when they get lucky, people say it's unlucky because they're probably going for a pet and they got a 1 in several 100,000 drop with a dragon spear or something like that,
Right.
or whatever it is. I think it's kind of a meme at this point in the community, kind of like to laugh at people who got them.
Yeah, that's true. There is that.
So I think even if we did change it for better design purposes of actually being a rare drop table, players would probably be upset that we changed something that has been with old school for as long as they think
Wow.
they can remember.
But maybe they'd accept another thing being added to it. Another unique, maybe, if there were one that was suitable to give from a completely generic thing from any monster and a few other pieces of content besides.
The problem as well is we've got things like, is it Gorax, is that what they're called? That have a very high rate of hitting that table. So even if we did have a unique on it, we're kind of putting people into that content to farm it, which is not very good content in itself.
It's things like that that sort of made me cautious about changing the thing at all, on the grounds that you change a piece of loot code that's called by hundreds of monsters, you've suddenly buffed all those monsters by different amounts because they all core it with different chances, especially Gorax. So I've always been a bit cautious about that one. That said, go back a year or so, one of our team did a fairly substantial buff to the rare loot table and the gem table by making it always give you something rather than nothing if you've got a Ring of Wealth on. And that makes a surprisingly big difference to the rarest end of it. Something that I'm not sure all players really took into account because they've got rings that do combat damage instead. But the Ring of Wealth ain't a bad thing for the rare loot table, if, of course, you don't mind that what it's got at the bottom of it is half a shield and a pointy stick. So putting something else kind of unique down there is quite appealing to me because make the Ring of Wealth useful again for that. Sorry, I seem to be half asleep for some reason. I might have to reboot after this.
That's all right. We are nearing the end of the stream. I will ask maybe one or two questions from the chat to round things off. The first is from Blood Dusk, and they ask if we can get a DPS counter at Zorcano, similar to how the Winter Todd has the point system and Corp has a DPS counter.
So a damage counter instead of a DPS counter.
Damage, right.
I don't see why it couldn't be added. It wouldn't be a true reflection of your actual score in relation to everyone else, because there's the mining part and everything in there. I think gives some points on some level.
Right, and that counts towards your sort of contribution.
Yeah. So someone might go, "Oh, I've done like 10% of our health, and there's 12 of us, but why didn't I get the MVP?" And that might feel weird.
Right.
Unless we just made the points visible, which I don't think we want to do.
Probably not. Sure. Okay.
Um,
All right. Sounds like we probably wouldn't do something like that then, actually, for Zorcano. I'll move on to our last question, which is, can you allow us to mount amulets of avarice in the player-owned house for sculling? I'm personally, I think, against this one. It's quite, I mean, it's easy enough to skull up at the Emblem Trader, who's very accessible in Edgeville. So I'm not keen to make the player-owned house any more powerful at this point.
yeah, I mean, if you've got your player in house, you literally just teleport to Edgeville and he's there.
Right.
Presumably they were hoping to get it and then go somewhere else than Edgeville or somewhere, I don't know, Anakal or whatever.
Okay. All right. Seeing lots of no's in the chat, so probably won't take that one any further. All right.
Before we wrap up, could I answer? Some people are asking about bots in a certain location, specifically Zolra, it seems, especially on the Reddit thread. And lest they think we're purposely ignoring it, I think it's the same answer to everything. Report the bots, then the ICU team will know where to focus their attention. They are being banned.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, so just before we do wrap up then, I realise we're at time. At the start of the stream, we introduced Mod Flippy, our brand new content dev. So if you missed it, make sure to rewind the VOD and check that out. He'll be deving the Halloween event this year. If you have any ideas or suggestions for that, send them his way and drop him a follow on @JagXFlippy on Twitter. Exclamation mark Roomfest and exclamation mark merch for your Roomfest tickets and Roomfest merch. We're doing personalised hoodies where you'll be able to print your name on the back as well as t-shirts. Exclamation mark BH for the Bounty Hunter rework design that went live yesterday, and exclamation mark LMS for the rewards poll blog that went live today. We're polling that from Friday to Wednesday next week. That just about covers things. We hope you guys have a wonderful week. We'll see you in the next one, and thank you to everyone on the couch. And Mob Bruno on the chat. Bye, bye everyone.